All right, a formal welcome to everyone. Good morning and welcome to Kabbalah Café. So we have a lot to get to today. First of all, we find ourselves about a week and a half before Passover, but don't worry. I'm not going to stress you out about cleaning and cooking and getting ready. That you can stress out yourselves on your own. However, I do want to speak about things that are perennial or that are timeless, i.e. the notion of creation and specifically the architecture of creation. And so I want to set the intention, as I just mentioned a moment ago, for today's class. The intention of today's class is to gain a mystical understanding, a Kabbalistic understanding of the energy, the specific divine energy that flows through all of creation. Now, here's what we know. What we know is that nothing in life is static. For something to be alive, it must be dynamic. Now, this is true not only of human beings who move and grow, not only true of animals who move and grow, not only true of plants that grow, but even stones. Even a stone that seems to be still, and perhaps one might say that the stone is dead, meaning it doesn't exhibit any form of life. It's not like the stone says, "How's it going?" By the way, if the stone does talk to you, you might want to look at that and check that out. Although it does say when Mashiach comes in the Messianic era, the stones of the streets, the cobblestone stones of the streets will look up and say to a person, sorry, maybe even today they look at a person, maybe only in the Messianic era will realize that they said this all along, basically say, golem, like brute human, what makes you better than me? If we don't think higher thoughts while walking on the stone ground, the stone says to us, what makes you better than me? Why are you stepping on me and me not stepping on you? Meaning, if your mind is empty of spiritual things, if you're thinking spiritual things, if you're thinking about God or thinking about purpose or creation or Torah mitzvahs, that's one thing. Then you have a reason to be stepping on something else. But if you don't have that awareness, then what makes you better than me, says the stone. So that's, all right, a little revenge of the stones. But the point is that, getting back to the idea, is that you and I might look at something like a stone and say, it's not alive. I don't see any life. I mean, it exists, but it's not alive because we define life by movement. However, Kabbalah says that in everything that exists, even the things that we call domain, which is the classification of life, like stones that we would call, in other words, inanimate objects that don't exhibit any animation. Inanimate means it's not animated. When you look at it, it doesn't look like it's alive. It doesn't exhibit any outward signs of life. And yet, Kabbalah says, those creatures, those creations are likewise alive. And so last week we spoke about the nature of a miracle. And we explained that there are three different types of miracles. Miracles that shatter nature, miracles that work with nature. And then we said that I don't know if we called it a miracle, but then we said that there's nature itself, which one could call a miracle that happens all the time. We then explained last week that although at first glance it might seem that the miracles that shatter nature are the loftiest form of a miracle because they're the ones that don't take nature into consideration and they kind of very forcefully and brutishly, I don't know if that's the right word, but very forcefully express God's power, dominion, reality, and truth and mastery over nature. Although that's true, one would think that the miracles that occur when one thing changed into another thing, like a staff into a snake, or water, a Nile River into blood, or when water itself stands like a wall, one might say that that's a lesser example of God's ability over creation itself, because creation is something from nothing, whereas a miracle is something from something. We said that last week, which then we question that premise. If you're creating something from something, isn't that really something from nothing if the previous something was completely different than the new something? So then you have something really, good morning, then you have something actually from nothing. So to understand this, and I don't want to rehash last week's class, that was all last week, and the recordings are posted, so you can always check that out. What I want to do today, though, is get into the very architecture, as I said before, architecture of creation, understand what is it that powers existence, which will help us understand both what creation is, what nature is, but also what miracles are. So I'm going to pass around, this is a brand new handout. So if you have the one from the last few weeks, keep that. But for right now, we're learning something brand new. I'm going to put this up on the screen as well. We have some more people that are joining us imminently back there. So if you could just pass down a few copies to kind of stay at the end, that would be great. All right, we have a lot to get to today. What we're going to study right now is from a work called Shar HaYichud V'Ha'emunah. And just to explain a little bit about the context of where this is coming from. So this is the second part of what we call the book of Tanya. Now, we call Tanya, or Likutei Amarim. Tanya is the Bible of Hasidic philosophy and really an incredible guide to Jewish mystical thought. It's composed of multiple books. There are multiple books within that volume. And so part one, we would call Likutei Amarim Tanya. Part two is called Shar HaYichud V'Emunah, which speaks about the nuts and bolts, spiritual nuts and bolts of creation and how creation unfolds. And I will tell you this, Shar HaYichud V'Emunah is some of those brilliant and deep ideas in Kabbalah and Chassidus, some of the deepest ideas that you and I will ever encounter. It served the basis of a course that I did a few years ago called the Kabbalah, the Matrix. And it is not that that's what makes it great. What makes it great is that it is great. But know that the Alter Rebbe, the author of Tanya, actually wished to put that section first, but felt like it might be too deep of an introduction or too deep of a step one to get into. Therefore, he put the first 53 chapters of Tanya first, and then we get into the second book. But we're going to jump right in because everyone around this table, I can see it in your faces. You're all ready for this, and you're all seasoned Kabbalists. And so there's no worry, there's no concern. You and me, we got this. So that is the good news. We're going to begin. We have a lot to get to today, as I keep on saying. Please stay with me as we go through this. So please open up your booklets. I'm going to put this up online as well. The booklets begin with, it's called Appendices, the letters of creation and creation versus splitting of the sea, both of which are relevant to our conversation. We begin on page 128, where it says appendix number 1. And again, for the sake of everybody who's joining us, you can now see that text as well. Okay, here we go. You guys, yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Will we be turning these back in, or can we write in them?
You can write in them.
Okay.
Absolutely. And again, I want to caution you. Caution is maybe not the right word. I want to highlight the fact that this is, again, some of the deepest stuff in Kabbalah, deepest stuff in Hasidic mystical philosophy, and some of the most powerful ideas that you will encounter. So let's begin Appendix 1, or Appendix I. It's like a Super Bowl naming here. The letters of creation. This is Shar HaYichud V'Emunah, chapters 1 and 12. There are 12 chapters. This is the first and the last chapter, which is consolidated here. Chapter number 1, and this is the opening of this text. So again, what we're doing, in case you're wondering, is we're doing a text within a text. We have our main text that we've been studying, but as we're talking about miracles and nature and transformation and creation, so this is germane, this is relevant to our conversation, and so we're studying a text within a text. Chapter number 1, and it begins with a verse from Deuteronomy. Know this day, and take it up unto your heart, that God is the mighty and just Lord in the heavens above and upon the earth below. There is no other. And if, in case you're wondering where this comes from Deuteronomy 4, verse 39. And it is also part of the Aleinu prayer. If you know the Aleinu, it's the prayer that we conclude the service with. Every service, we conclude with the Aleinu prayer, and the Aleinu includes this line. And sometimes it's sung. Ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim imal v'al haaretz mitochas einot. Right? That's the end of the first paragraph of the Aleinu. So he says this requires explanation. For would it really occur to you that there is a God dwelling in the waters beneath the earth to the point that is necessary to caution so strongly and negate this thought by stating that one should take it unto your heart and come to the realization that this is indeed not so? Look at the opening verse in italics. Know this day and take it upon your heart that God is the mighty and just Lord in the heavens above and upon the earth below there is no other. And so he's asking a simple question. What is this verse telling us? That there's no other God. There's only one God. There's no other God in the heaven or beneath the earth. What do we really think that underneath the crust of the earth in the waters that are beneath the earth's surface, that there's some other God that's there, that the Torah has to tell us, oh, no, there's no other God? Who's thinking that there's another God beneath the earth? That doesn't make any sense. So that's the opening question. He immediately begins that we're studying Shar Yichud V'Emunah, second part of Tanya, related to our text. This is a text within a text. All right. So he says, it is written. And this, listen to how he articulates this idea. It is written, La'olam Hashem Dvarcha Nitzav Bashamayim. Forever, O God, your word stands firm in the heavens. Now, let's break down this verse. What does it mean, your word stands firm in the heavens? So the Baal Shem Tov, let's continue. The Baal Shem Tov, a blessed memory, has explained this concept at length and made it widely known that this means that your word, which you uttered at the beginning of creation, i.e., let there be a firmament in the midst of the in the midst of the waters, these very words and letters through which the heavens were created stand firmly forever within the firmament of heaven and are forever clothed within all of the heavens to give them life. As it is written, the word of our Lord shall stand firm forever, and as likewise written, his words live and stand firm forever. The premise of the Baal Shem Tov's idea that Hashem's word literally continues to sustain existence is based on multiple verses as quoted in this paragraph. We have the idea of forever, O God, your word stands firm in the heavens. Forever, your word stands firm in the heavens. That means your word is forever in the heavens. We also have the words of our Lord shall stand firm forever, and his words live and stand firm forever. Which words are we talking about here? Now, one might say, for the last two verses, that maybe it's the word, i.e. his mitzvot, his commandments. One might say that his call to us to live a moral, decent Jewish life, those words are eternal and we can't modify them. That might be how we could construe the last two verses. But if you look at the first verse at the beginning of that second paragraph, where it says, or I guess third paragraph, forever, O God, your word stands firm in the heavens. La'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav bashamayim. What word of God stands in the heavens? Torah is given to humans on earth. So what type of word of God is standing firm in the heaven? Comes along but the Baal Shem Tov, the great founder of the Hasidic movement and miracle worker and spiritual a teacher par excellence. And the Baal Shem Tov says, you know what it means? Literally, the words that God uttered to create the heavens, those words, those letters, the language itself remains constantly within them to power them and give them life. This paragraph right here opens our eyes to a concept that is mind-blowing. And it's a concept that I think in recent years makes a lot more sense to the human mind, because you and I are utilizing this construct every moment of every day. If you've ever looked at a screen, whether it's on your desktop computer, a laptop computer, a phone in your pocket, a screen anywhere you're going, a digital display, you know, as well as I do, that there's code, computer code, right? Soft code that's making that operate the way it does. And if you were to delete the code, that would the software would no longer work. Right? We know this to be true. It's not an articulation of faith. In fact, you too can be a coder according to these Super Bowl commercials that I watched for Claude and Anthropic. You too can be a coder for the low price of monthly AI, whatever that is, right? Good. Everything is driven by code. What is code? Language. What is the language of code? Letters and characters. Literally hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of letters, strings of code that power pretty much everything that makes our world operate today. Your bank, right? Your cryptocurrency, if you have that, right? Everything is powered by Code. What happens if you delete the code? That thing is no longer going to work. What happens if you modify the code? Whatever shows up on the screen, whatever was on the screen or whatever the display is going to be modified. In fact, it's not so complicated. If you've ever used something like Photoshop or Canva, you guys familiar with Canva? It's this online design situation, right? This design platform. Canva is so easy to use. Yeah. If you want to change the color of something, great. Click on it, change the color. But but you can change the color just by sliding a slider, dragging it on whatever color you think, or you can actually use the hex code. There's a code that represents the color. A 5 or 6 digit code comprised of letters and numbers, alphanumeric code that represents a color, and that's consistent through computer programming. And so if you want white, I think it's F, 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 F. F, 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 maybe another F, either 5 or 6 characters. All Fs, I believe, is white. All zeros, I believe, are black. And then in between that, there's a lot of other options that are out there. But here's the point. You want to change the color? Great. I mean, you can drag the little thing, the little wand around and change the color, or you can just change the code. They really do the same thing because the coding is with letters. Either you know the code with the letters, or you can just drag the thing, which then tells the software because there's code telling that to do that, then changes the letters of the code. The point is, you can go from blue to red, from red to green, from green to orange, from orange to pink. You can go change colors, and all it is a modification of the code. The code that you change changes the color that appears. Comes along the Baal Shem Tov 300 years ago, more than that, whatever it is, 300 or so years ago, and says, listen up, the world as we know it, existence as we know it, is powered by code, divine code. The letters of God, the letters of speech that God uttered, Yehi Rakia Bashamayim. Let there be a firmament in the heavens. Those words are what continue to sustain the heavens, the firmament in the heavens. It's the letters of that articulation that keep it going. And it constantly stands in creation. Let's continue. Bottom line of page 128. For if the creative letters were to depart even for an instant, God forbid, please turn the page to page 130. If the letters of creation were to depart even for an instant, God forbid, and return to their source, all the heavens would become not an absolute nothingness, and it would be as though they had never existed at all, exactly as before the utterance, let there be a firmament. And here he says, the author tells us that just like code, if you delete the code, the software no longer exists, meaning the program no longer exists. The same thing is true with God the same thing is true with God's creation. If those words, Yehi Rakia, let there be a firmament, if those words are deleted, can I date myself? From the mainframe, I don't even know what a mainframe is, but it sounds like it would be appropriate there. If they were deleted from the software of reality, guess what else deletes? The entire firmament. And if you notice, he says all the heavens would become not an absolute nothingness, and it would be as though they had never existed at all. You know what that means? Not only would its future be deleted, its entire past would be deleted. Its entire history would be deleted. It would be as though it had never existed at all, which is kind of wild. It's kind of mind-bending if you think about it. Imagine something being deleted not only from that point on, but retroactively and pulled out seamlessly as though it had never existed. It's crazy. It's crazy to think of that. But that's what would happen if the letters of creation would depart from reality. Let's continue, second paragraph, 130. And so it is with all created things, in all the upper and lower worlds, and even this physical earth in the realm of the completely inanimate. See that last line? The completely inanimate. That means that even stones have letters that are powering it. If the letters of the 10 utterances, I'll explain that in a moment, by which the earth was created during the 6 days of creation, were to depart from it, but for an instant, God forbid, it would revert to naught and absolute nothingness exactly as before the 6 days of creation. What are the 10 utterances? So our sages tell us in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, Ba'asara mamarot nivra ha'olam. With 10 utterances was the world created. God created the world with 10 statements. Statement number 1, let there be light. Statement number 2, I don't know the exact order. Maybe it's in one of the footnotes. Let there be a firmament, etc. Throughout the 6 days of creation, God says multiple times the phrase, let there be. Let there be this, let there be that. Those are the 10 utterances of creation. And Kabbalah says that those 10 utterances, those 10 statements of God, let there be such and such, those letters of that utterance are what sustain the thing that was created by that utterance. Not only did it create it in the moment, but it sustains it for all time. And if you pull out those letters, if you pull out those words, if you pull out that communication, the thing would disappear as if it was never here in the first place. So the fact that we have light, the fact that we have firmament, the fact that we have the sun, the moon, the stars, all of that is because the language that God used to create those things remains forever powering those things. Pull out the code, the whole thing collapses. And not only from now on, collapses retroactively. Make sense? Yes.
Those 10 have any connection with the 10 spirit?
Yeah, the 10 are connected. No, 10 are created with the 10. It's connected to 10 sefirot. Everything is connected. It's all interconnected. What that connection is.
I would say the first element would be the first sefirot, or they're not correct.
I don't remember exactly how we draw the lines between them, but it's definitely, the lines are definitely drawn. Also the 10 commandments. But there's a parallel between the 10 utterances and the 10 commandments. There's a lot of parallels. That would be another class to do research on to get all that straight.
All the 10s.
All the 10s, exactly. 10s are wild.
So where are all these letters stored? In the rocks, in the Torah? Where are they? Where's
the letters are not physical letters. The letters are what we would call the spiritual code or spiritual DNA of the fabric of existence. Which what I mean to say is, if you take a hammer and chisel open a stone, it's not like you're going to see letters floating out, but the letters are there. Meaning the spiritual letters, the metaphysical letters that power creation, that can't be seen under a microscope, but are powering existence. Those are still there. Those are powering it, flowing inside the stone of these letters of creation, flowing inside you and I. Nasa Adam b'tzalmenu k'tmasenu. Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. Flowing through us is that utterance of God where God says, let us make man. That's flowing through us. Those letters are flowing through you and I. This is profoundly important, as the Alter Rebbe, the author of this text, will continue to explain, because most people who believe in God also believe that God created in a manner of one and done. Created and stepped away. That's how most people, when you conceive of creation, first of all, not everybody conceives of the notion that God created heaven and earth. God created this. That itself requires, somewhat of faith in there being, number one, a God and a God that's creating. But even if you imagine that there is some God who created. Most of us would imagine that God created, and that's it, and it's done. Like you and I create something. We create, this is produced, the computer mouse is produced, and it's good. It exists. What we're saying now is that that's not how this works. The letters are constantly pulsing and flowing within that thing to give it life. If not, it disappears in such a way that it was never there in the first place. That is the constant interaction between that which powers the thing and that which is being powered by the thing. You constantly need the code. The code is constantly running in the background, as it were. And that's divine code, divine articulation. It's not like God said once, let there be the firmament, and boom, there it is. God is constantly speaking this into existence. Let's get back inside into our text. And you'll see how he describes this. Okay. I think we're in that second paragraph. Did we finish that second paragraph or in the middle of it? Did I get stuck by completely inanimate? I might have. Let's do that second paragraph again. And so it is, page 130, paragraph number 2. And so it is with all created things in all the upper and lower worlds, and even this physical earth and the realm of the complete inanimate, if the letters of the 10 utterances by which the earth was created during the 6 days of creation were to depart from it but for an instant, God forbid, it would revert to not an absolute nothingness, exactly as before the 6 days of creation. This thought was expressed by the Arizal. The Arizal was the great Rabbi Yitzchak or Isaac Luria, the great Kabbalist of the 1500s, when he said that even within that which appears to be utterly inanimate matter, such as stones or earth or water, there is a soul and spiritual life force. I've been mentioning multiple times this morning that even stones have a soul, have a life force, have the divine letters. Where did I get that from? I didn't make it up. It's the Arizal. It's right here. That is, i.e., although they evince no demonstrable form of animation, meaning although they don't look alive, within them are nevertheless clothed the letters of speech from the 10 utterances which give life and existence to inanimate matter, enabling it to come into being out of the not and nothingness that preceded the 6 days of creation. What allows a stone to be and not collapse into nothingness? The answer is a flow, a constant and steady flow of divine energy, divine light. You can call it whatever you want. It's the same thing. Divine language, divine letters, the code of creation that comes from the original 10 utterances. Now, the obvious question is, 1 second. I have studied the Bible. I have read the opening chapter of Genesis. It's not even that long. It's a few dozen verses. And I don't remember seeing God say, let there be a stone. And so you're telling me that the stone only exists because of God's utterances at the beginning of creation. I don't recall God saying, Yehi Even, let there be a stone. Never happened. So how does the stone exist? The letters of creation, which letters? He deals with that in the next paragraph. You understand the question?
I don't want to go down a tangent.
We are all about tangents.
But you said
Yeah, love tangents.
that
I will take you down a tangent if no one else does.
that light and energy are the same thing. My understanding is they're not quite the same thing. The divine light isn't what flows through us; it's divine energy. And
Good,
so-
good. So divine. Yes. So if we're getting specific, right? R is different than shefa. Light is different than energy. For the purpose of this conversation, I'm kind of like smoothing out the differences and saying it's the divine empowerment that happens.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's a difference in light and energy, and these are two different.
Because it's the energy that we're going to connect with, not necessarily the light. I don't know. We'll talk another time, but
There's different levels of light, different experience of light, different R versus shefa light versus we call energy flow. But that's already that's good.
So
but
I didn't
it's
want to go down the tangent.
no. It's a good tangent to go down, but all right, for right now. So let's take a look at the next paragraph where he's talking about now, well, we don't see stone in the original 10 utterances. Now, last paragraph 130. Now, although the name Evan, stone, is not mentioned in the 10 utterances recorded in the Torah, which would therefore seem to mean that it shouldn't exist because, as we said before, nothing can exist without the powering of God's letters of creation. But if God did not actually articulate, let there be a stone, so then how does it exist? He says, nevertheless, life force flows to the stone from the 10 utterances by means of combinations and substitutions of their letters. Should we break down what that means?
So does that mean that every inanimate object has a different combination of letters that form that art?
That's a very good question. Does every stone have the same energy, or does every individual stone have its unique combination of letters? What he's saying, yeah, that's your question, right?
No, I didn't even go that far. I'm thinking stone to stone has this combination. But what about other inanimate objects?
Yes. Every inanimate, yeah, that's easier to answer. Phew, I'm glad you didn't ask my question. Every inanimate item, object, existence, reality, life, living creature. Kabbalah would call it a living creature. It wouldn't call it dead. It would call it living creature. Every living creature, including stones, which is a living creature, has a unique flow of energy to it that comes from the original 10 utterances. Now, the question would be, so afar would be earth. That would have its own combination. Evan, stone, would have its own combinations. Every inanimate object would have its own unique combination. The question is, though, again, let's reset the question. I don't remember seeing these things, everything mentioned. I don't see mayim, water. No, water is mentioned. I don't see whatever. There's tons of things, specific items in this world that are mentioned. So what's going on? So he says, don't worry. God articulated the code, and from that code, you can make any number of what's it called again? Of combinations. It's almost like, to give an example, it's almost like how many I don't know what the right word is. How many scales in music are there? Scales, is that the right term? Octaves, scales. I'm not a musician. Keys on the piano. 88 keys on the piano. How many notes are there? There you go. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. 7?
Sharps and flats. So yeah, there's a finite number.
It's a finite number. And every single musical composition, every single piece of music that humans have ever known can be played with using those same combination of very limited building blocks. Every idea that we can express, Hebrew has 22 letters. English has what, 26 letters? Yeah, I haven't counted. I know my ABCs, don't worry. I know them well, but I haven't counted them in a little while. 26, 22. You only need a finite number of building blocks to create myriad combinations. Correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah? That's why passwords, right? Everyone check your passwords. You don't want to be hacked, right? Passwords, you have like, I don't know, it used to be like 6 characters. Then they went up to 8 characters. Now I've seen like 12 characters, whatever. Once you get into like multiple things and you have both numbers and letters and capital letters and symbols, now you're dealing with a dizzying array of stuff. Although I once saw a comedian, not once, I saw a comedian recently, a clip, my wife Leah showed me, who is an English guy. I don't know his name. Maybe you know his name. He's hilarious. He says, all right, so passwords. Passwords came out and everyone chose their favorite word, because that's what you do for password, favorite word. Then they say, okay, well, now you need a capital letter. Great, I'll just capitalize the first letter of my favorite word. Then it's like, okay, well, now you need a number. All right, my capital word, my favorite word with capitalized, and then the number 1. And then like you need a symbol. Like, okay, exclamation mark. He goes through it and I'm like, oh my gosh, how does this guy know my password? It's crazy.
Yours is probably Chabad 7070 exclamation point.
It's not, but I've seen many Chabads that are Chabad 770 exclamation mark, exactly. Capital C for Chabad. So the big idea here is that when you have even a finite number of characters and letters, you can then create a dizzying array of combinations of things. And like, if you want to find the Hebrew letters, Aleph, Bet, and Nun, which form the Hebrew word Evan, which means stone, yeah, take the 10 utterances, you will find an Aleph, Bet, and a Nun. Just reformat it, reconfigure it, and that's what you have. Basically, it's saying that these characters of creation, or these letters of creation, or as I called it in the email subject that I sent out last night, these letters of life, These letters that create and sustain life, these letters are malleable. You can combine them. And he goes into the math over here, which is wild. And this is, I don't want to get too bogged down by the math, but here we are. Let's continue. I'm going to start again from that paragraph. Now, although the name Evan stone is not mentioned in the 10 utterances recorded in the Torah directly, nevertheless, life force flows to the stone from the 10 utterances by means of combinations and substitutions of their letters, which are transposed in the 231 gates, either in direct or reverse order, as explained in Sefer Yetzirah, so that ultimately 132, the combination of letters that form the name Evan, descends from the 10 utterances and is derived from them. And this combination of letters is the life force of the stone. Now you might be wondering, what are the 231 gates and combinations of letters? And so the good news is we have a footnote here. And I believe I worked on this footnote. So here we go. First of all, what are the combination of letters we understand? But it also says that some letters are transposed or substituted. What is that? What does that mean? Take a look at footnote 14, whereby an aleph, for example, may take the place of a hey, since both letters are articulated by the same organ of speech, and so on. Manatzapach, I think is the way that we describe it in Hebrew grammar. There are different letters, Hebrew letters, also English, that are produced by different parts of the mouth. So, for example, the letter mem. Okay, so everyone, let's do it. Hold on. What's happening here? Let's do a chant together. You guys ready? Let's do a chant together. Mem. Mem. That sounds like you're in a chant. Mem. I'm kidding. You don't have to. Okay, mem. How do you articulate the mem? What part of your mouth are you using for mem? Lips. Okay. Now say with me, nun. 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 What are you using for that?
Tongue.
Tongue, and what else? Nun. I'm using palate. The front palate and a tongue. Right? Am I saying it weird? I thought this nun. Okay. And not sa. Tsa. 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 What are we using for tsa? Tsa. Tsa. Yeah. Tsa. Tsa. Okay. Pa. Pa. That's also lips. Ma. Pa. Sounds the same. Cha. Cha. That's all the way back there. Cha is all the way back there. And then, of course, aleph and hey, that's a breathy situation. What's the point? This is like we're like flirting with breath work here this morning. Might as well just call it a breath work session. I'm kidding. But like every letter there's five. Kabbalah says there's five distinct ways to make sounds. Every Hebrew letter can be divided into one of the five spaces or places of which a sound is being made. Different sounds are being made. Why is this significant? So I just want to pause here for some station identification about five. So Kabbalah speaks of five gevurot, 5 levels or 5 dimensions of gevura. Gevura means, what does gevura mean? Strength, severity, but it also means distinction. Chesed is all flowing and kind of like a blob of flowiness, whereas gevura makes distinction, delineation, definition. So Kabbalah says, look at your hand. Look at your hand. Okay, make a fist. We'll do this together. And now open up your hand. How many fingers do you have?
5.
5 fingers, hopefully, right? 5 fingers. What's the significance of 5 fingers? Imagine if you did not have any fingers at all. You wouldn't have any fine motor ability, fine motor skill ability, right? Or dexterity or whatever it is. You could not hold a pencil, right? If the hand was just like a thing. And animals have that, right? There are animals that have just a solid thing at the end, right? That's huh?
The sloth.
Sloth?
Yeah.
Right? I've never seen a sloth write an essay. I don't know. Maybe sloths do. The point is that the fingers give us incredible ability. There's so much that we can do. And even if you did, even the thumb, not even the thumb, without a thumb, has anyone ever had like a brace on their hand and like now you suddenly can't use something and now it's like, wow, these 4 fingers are kind of useless without a thumb. The thumb is clutch. You don't even think about it, but like we have so much dexterity and so much possibility, and it's all a combination of these five fingers. What's my point in all of this? My point is simply to say that while Gevura seems to be, most of us would say, oh, Chesed is better than Gevura. Like, I like Chesed. Chesed sounds way more friendly, way more fun, whatever it is. Chesed is like non-judging. Chesed is just free-flowing. Chesed seems like the place to be. Gevura seems like strict and demanding and like setting up boundaries. But you know what? By splitting the fingers apart, you actually have a lot of possibility that the hand like this, closed up, would not have. The same thing is true with the articulations of speech. If you and I could only go, first of all, what is that?
AC?
AC? Yeah, I don't know. This system does not work, but whatever. If which is weird, but it's making sounds. If it's, it wants to get on the sound game. If all we could do was make a sound, we couldn't communicate. Imagine if the conversation was, I mean, that's not going to get us anywhere. That's not going to get us anywhere. So the fact that we have different parts of the mouth, of the throat, of the palate, of the teeth, the tongue, we have all of these things. So now we can, I mean, think about it. What is sound? What is communication? We're producing a sound from, I don't know, from within, right? And then as the sound, as a pure sound comes out, it kind of gets sliced and diced by the different parts of our mouth and comes out in all these different ways. And now we can produce any combination, any type of measure of combination of words and ideas. You can share the deepest thoughts, your deepest emotions, and you know how? Through this abada, right? Through all these different permutations of the mouth and the sound. Pretty cool. All right, back to the footnotes. Okay, we're in the footnotes right now. So that is why Aleph and Hey in footnote 14, that's why Aleph and Hey can be transposed, can be substituted for each other. Why? Because they both come from the same place of speech. By the way, this happens often in Kabbalah where they say that if you switch one letter, you can produce like a new word or new idea. Switch one letter. Well, how do you switch out a letter for another letter? Because it comes from the same part of the mouth, and so therefore they can be exchanged in certain circumstances. All right, footnote 15. Here we go. Take a look at this. The 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet in 2-letter combinations. Footnote 15 on the bottom of the page. The 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet in 2-letter combinations yield a total of 462 combinations. Is everyone with me? I think it's called factorial. Footnote 15, previous page. Is that correct? Who's our math, any math gurus here, math whizzes? Who's our expert in mathematics? All right, if you are an expert in math, please speak up. So if you have 22 letters, which there are 22 Hebrew letters, how many 2-letter combinations can you make of 22 letters?
462.
The answer is 462. The answer is 462. Of these, back in the footnote, half are the exact reverse of the other half. Ooh, that's a footnote of the other half, i.e. Aleph Bet and Bet Aleph. Hence, there are 231 2-letter combinations in direct order and the same number in reverse order.
ChatGPT confirmed.
What is it? What'd you say? Oh, how many combinations can you make up 22 letters? You asked that? But ask what it's called. Ask what the formula of that is.
Well, there is a formula, but it doesn't say what it's called.
Ask it. Is it factorial? Basically, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. So you could have Aleph, Bet, Aleph, Gimel, Aleph, Dalet, Aleph, Hey, Aleph, right? The first letter, you can pair it up with all of the other letters. And then the second letter, you can also pair up with all the letters. Okay, whatever it's called. Whatever it's called, the math works out. There's a lot of math in Kabbalah, by the way. We don't usually do math in Kabbalah. We usually to the non-math Kabbalah text.
Refuses to name it.
It refuses to name it.
Keeps on saying the same. It's a
It is the
combination, it's this, it's that.
The combination, the math, the formula that shall not be named.
Combination formula.
All right, fine. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it. All right, back to the story. Back inside. So what we have, so there's 462 combinations, but Kabbalah says half of those combinations don't count. I mean, they do count, but we're not going to count the fact that you can have Aleph and Bet as one combination, and then Bet and Aleph as a second combination. Those are truly two different combinations, but they're really the same two letters on an energy level. Are you with me on this?
Like Av and Bat?
Yeah. It's two different letters.
Right.
Sorry, two different words, but it's the same letters. So if we're talking about, okay, so maybe I need to introduce one other permutation. Yeah, but that's still not a, okay, whatever. So here's what I want to point out, and this is very important. Every letter is not just a letter, it's not just a character. Every letter in Hebrew, because Hebrew is the original language of creation, every letter in Lashon Kodesh, in the Holy Tongue, is an energy, is a life force. And so when you're creating, you as in God, when God creates stone, the letters Aleph, Bet, and Nun carry the life force that creates and powers the stone into being. That is the precise DNA. Now the mystics had a very deep understanding of the exact energy of each letter. We've also done classes in the past about the energy of the letters, but not today. I'm not going to do a deep dive into that. But every letter has an energy. When you combine letters together, you create a certain type of product. It's no different than if you're studying chemistry, right? And you're understanding how different types of chemicals combine and produce a chemical reaction. So if I mix, what is water? Water is H2O. Great. So if I take hydrogen, right, 2H2. I take 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, right, H2O. The next thing you know, I got myself water, right? Salt, what is salt? Sodium chloride, NaCl, sodium chloride. Take some sodium, take some chloride, boom, shakalaka, I got myself some salt, right? You combine certain chemicals, certain things, organic materials together, and you produce whatever it is, whatever result you have. The same thing is true, again, on a metaphysical level when it comes to the creation of all existence. You take the letters Aleph, Bet, and Nun, which form the word Even, you put them together, and now you have a stone. And so if you were to pull out any one of those components, the stone would not exist. Okay, let's get back inside. All right. 132, second paragraph. We just spent a paragraph or two, or one paragraph on the idea of a stone having a soul. But let's get back into the larger context. And so it is, he says, 132, second paragraph, with all created things in the world. The names of all creatures in the Holy Tongue are the very letters of speech which descend degree by degree from the 10 utterances recorded in the Torah by means of substitutions and transpositions of letters through the 231 gates until they reach a particular created thing and become invested in it, thereby giving it life. That is very, very powerful. Everything that exists through the Hebrew name of that thing. Everything has a Hebrew name. Even if you and I don't know what the Hebrew name might be, doesn't matter. Everything is created through language. It's all code. And what is the code? The code is the Holy Tongue, the Hebrew letters. Everything is powered by a code of Hebrew letters that makes it exist. By the way, that is why it says that what's one of the first things that Adam, the first human being, did? Because one of the first things he did was he named the animals. He gave the animals a name. And that revealed his brilliance. The question you and I might ask is, what's the big deal about naming the animals? First of all, why was that necessary? Second of all, why does that express the brilliance of Adam? And the answer is, it was necessary. And it was brilliant of Adam because what he was really saying is, I see your soul. I see your life force. And because I see your life force, I know which letter combinations are the ones that are powering you into existence. That is the brilliance of Adam HaRishon, of the first human being, who was so attuned with divine energy. He was able to literally look at something and see, oh, your Aleph, Bet, Nun. That's a stone, not an animal, but I see your combination of letters. By the way, it says that when we give a name to a child, right, when we give a Hebrew name, there's an element of divine prophecy. Why divine prophecy? For the same reason. Because what a name really means is a name is capturing the life force of that thing. So it's not just a random name. The Hebrew name is not just a random name. The Hebrew name is an articulation of the energy, of the various points of energy that are coming together to produce this child, this being, this soul, and this person. And so how would you and I be able to at all ever know the soul of the child? That's why we have a little divine assistance. Well, that's why we have a little divine, alley-oop pass, and then we slam it home. Why? Because otherwise, how would we even know what that is?
Wouldn't you say a little is an understatement into the selection of that name?
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
We think we might not be cognizant of it.
It's almost
We might think that, I'm choosing the name because, Zayda and Zaidi and Bubby and Grandma and Grandpa, or a name that I like, or an Israel or a Hebrew name, whatever it is. We might think that, there's another reason behind it, but we're being guided to that by divine orchestration. The name, we have to get the name right, or the name has to be gotten right. Otherwise, it's a mismatch of the energy. So if everything has a Hebrew name, which constitutes its life force, certainly human beings have that as well. Yaakov, jump in.
I was just curious about the question that Toba did not ask. So each tree has an energetic personality, which can be felt. And obviously, you were starting to talk about, how does the individual object, because all plants are not the same, all trees are not the same.
Excellent.
How do they get their
question.
individuality? And the human,
Excellent
does
question.
the name
Yaakov's
create
question,
the person?
and the question that I said that Toba, I thought you were asking but didn't, is what about the individual tree or the individual stone or rock as distinct from the other one? So the trees would be because again, stones, we might even see the difference, although we could, definitely see the difference.
Granite, you have different kind of stones.
Right. And certainly when it comes to gemstones, those have tremendous energy.
Yeah.
And they also have Hebrew names in the Torah. But so that we could say, has a unique name. But I think what I think it comes down to is like this. There are certain things that we might just call eights, right? Tree. And so there is, my understanding is that there would be kind of like a generalized bucket of energy for tree, but then a more specific channel of energy for that specific item. So, for example, the Talmud says that there is no blade of grass that does not have its own mazal, its own star that hits it, not literally, but and says grow, meaning that not just grass is powered by God or by spirituality, but every blade of grass has its own unique divine form. Now, the question is, how does that jive? How does that work with the letters that we're talking about here? So my understanding would be probably like this, that we would probably have this notion of a general force that's being powered by the same letters for the same type of reality. So trees would be tree, right? Eights. Or grass would be Asaph, right? Would be grass. So we would have like certain things that would be common, but then within that, there would be like a secondary combination of divine energy that then distinguishes one from the other. And again, when you have so many letters and so many options, you have a dazzling array of possibilities that can have different permutations. That's just the way it is. The way it works is that in everything, whether it's chemistry or whether it's DNA, there's just so many permutations. Or as we speak about a combination of letters or keys on the piano, or notes or octaves, you have so many different combinations that can be produced from relatively few characters and elements. And so again, I would say that the general species is powered by the general name, whereas the specific elements, including the individual blade of grass, also has its own unique life force that is also somewhat of a combination of letters or energies that come together for that. Okay, let's go back inside and let's see where we're up to over here. So we are up to the third paragraph of 132. This descent is necessary because individual creatures, unlike the more pervasive beings, such as the heavens, earth, sun, and moon, cannot receive their life force directly from the actual 10 utterances recorded in the Torah. I would modify that opening brackets and say not this descent is necessary. I would say these combinations and substitutions are necessary. What he's about to say is that your stone in the parking lot or your pebble could not be powered directly from God saying, let there be a pebble, because that's too much energy for a small little pebble. When God powers the things directly in the 10 utterances, when he says, let there be a firmament, let there be, those are things that are around for a long time. And those are things that are very powerful and mighty. But the individual, the micro element of creation, those need to be substitutions, which represent a smaller amount of light and life force inside that thing. Does that make sense? That's what he's about to say here. Let's start it again. This combination is necessary because individual creatures, unlike the more pervasive beings, such as the heavens, earth, sun, and moon, cannot receive their life force directly from the actual original 10 utterances recorded in the Torah, for the life force issuing directly from them is far greater than the capacity of the individual creatures. They can receive the life force only when it descends and is progressively diminished degree by means of substitutions and transpositions of the letters. And he adds here for the first time, by means of gematriot, their numerical values, until the life force can be condensed and clothed and a particular creature can be brought forth from it. And again, what he's saying here clearly is that the individual blade of grass or the individual tree or the individual stone, whatever it is, cannot be powered from the original. The individual creature cannot be powered from or by the original 10 utterance, one of the 10 utterances, because that would constitute a very powerful influx of energy that would be too strong for that individual creature to hold and withstand. All right, let's continue. We're almost done. Let's continue. And by the name, last paragraph on 132, and the name by which the creature is called in the holy tongue is a vessel for the life force condensed into the letters of that name, which is descended from the 10 utterances recorded in the Torah that have given the power and vitality to create a being ex nihilo and give it life forever. For the Torah and the Holy One, blessed be he, are one. And what he says here is that indeed it is the letters of the holy tongue, i.e. Lashon Kodesh, i.e. Hebrew. It's the letters of the holy tongue that literally give it life, that are coming from the 10 utterances, not just random letters, but coming from a combination from the original 10 utterances that give the thing its power. And I want to be very clear here. We're not saying that God is not creating and sustaining things, but the 10 utterances are. The 10 utterances are nothing but God's word, God's articulation of his energy and his creative capacity. And so we're not talking about a separate entity that's creating. This is God creating using the medium of the Hebrew letters, using the medium of the 10 utterances. But what this does is it presents a very powerful understanding of the interplay between creator and creation. And what that means is that the relationship between creator and creation is one that is ongoing and not just once upon a time. The truth is, we have to save this for next time, because this is the crux of chapter number 12. No, not really. This is the crux of the next few chapters. But chapter 12 also continues this idea, which we don't have time. We're at the time now, 11:30, and I want to kind of wrap up over here. What the Alter Rebbe continues in the second chapter of this text, which we don't have here, and you can take this and read it if you like and review it. But what the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 2 is that this provides a response to those who believe, as I said before, that God created the world one and done. God created and walked away. See, most things that are created, most things, everything that humans create, you can walk away from. You create a piece of art and you walk away from it. You create a composition, you walk away. You write a book and you can walk away from it. It still exists. It doesn't disappear because you walked out of the room. That's not how it works. But with the creation of heaven and earth, and the fact that we just said that creation only continues to exist so long as the divine letters are flowing through that thing, that means if God were to cease projecting this creature into being through the letters, it would collapse into itself, disappear as though it had never been. That is the power of God's creation. That it only exists as long as God is powering it into being. And that's a strong contrast to the way we create. God creates in an ongoing fashion. We create one and done. We create, we walk away, it still exists. And the reason is because we're not really creating. We're just adjusting something into something else. We took a piece of wood, we made it into a table. It was there before us. It will be there after us. It doesn't need our constant touch. Whereas if you're creating something out of nothing and powering it into being with these letters of creation that are literally powering the firmament into being out of nothingness, then that energy has to constantly be pulsing through reality to make it be. Ultimately, where he's going with this, in our text, getting back to our text, is to ask the question, well, if you had a staff, a stick, that's an eitz, Hebrew word, eitz, tree, what would a staff be? Makel, all right, whatever it is, a staff. And now it becomes a snake, a nachash. You know what that means? Different letters are powering it. If your staff turns into a snake, you know what that means? God switched the letters. If God switched the letters, it's like he's starting from scratch. And if that's the case, then it turns out that a miracle should be just as marvelous as creation of heaven and earth, i.e. the creation of new letters into this thing to give it life that have to constantly now be empowering it in order for it to be a continuous snake. With that point aside, what we learned today is something powerful. Don't take anything for granted. Don't even take granite for granted, as you said about stones, Oded, right? The granite that you see on your countertop, well, that's not going anywhere. That's a stone slab. Is it really? There's a constant pulse of divine energy. There's a constant pulse of God's life force. There's a constant pulse of Evan. Evan, if you ever hear your countertop speaking, you might want to get that checked out. Or you could say, that's Kabbalah, that's God's word. God doesn't say, let there be a stone. But through the transposition, combination, substitutions, gematriot, numerical equivalents of the letters, God can produce even this finite-sized slab that is on your kitchen counter. There's life force flowing through everything. Our job is, number one, to know that, and therefore to treat all of creation with dignity and respect as befits that which God is currently powering into being. God doesn't make anything in order to be simply destroyed. That's why there's a prohibition in Torah called Baal Tashchit. You can't take something and just destroy it. God is powering it into being, respect it, and utilize it for its intended purpose to realign it with its creator. That's our job. That's our task. That is a task that only humans can do. Only humans can take something of the physical world and realign it with its source. That is our job, and that comes from us respecting the fact that everything has this divine energy flowing through it. May we have a week of empowerment, and as we get ready for Pesach, may we realize that God is in all of the little details, and may this give us strength in the days ahead. Let us say amen. Thank you all for joining. A quick note, Tuesday night, we have our annual Pesach boot camp, right? We'll be schwitzing to the oldies. I'm kidding. Where we will be getting ready for the holiday, an intensive 60-minute class to get everyone ready and primed and pumped for the energy of the day. So please join me Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. We do it right there in the Daily Shul or on Zoom. Be there or be square matzah, which is possibly a thing.
Same concept that we had earlier on with different shards.
Pleasure. Good to see you, friends. No worries. Great to see you guys.
Different shards of energy, light, connect with.
Yeah, so no, that's a little bit different.
It's a little different.
That's a little bit different. When we spoke about sparks of light and everything, those were from the world of Tohu that preceded Tikkun, through the shattering of the vessels. Those are the shattered vessels of the world of chaos that preceded the world of order. What we're suggesting here is that even not just the shards of light that are embedded in the fabric of the material thing, the material thing that holds the shard is also only in existence because of the divine letters flowing through it. This is an even deeper concept. Meaning, it's not just that inside the table, there's a purpose here. The table itself is powered by divine code. And that makes the substance itself whole. All right.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Mark. Dr. Maxey, good to see you. I think I saw Ellen before. Good to see you. Yaakov, Alexa, and Mariana, good to see you all. All right. Have a wonderful week. Shavua Tov.
Shavua
And
Tov.
lot of
Shavua
empowerment.
Tov.
Good to see everybody.